come to, Jordan? Are you ready for a story, Hannah? Yes? Oh, you've got a little boat. Is that made out of a walnut shell? That's pretty neat. No? Oh, it's a boat. Right, it's not a walnut shell. You're right. Well, I have a really different story this morning. Is it an old story or a new story? What do you think? Do you think it's an old story? Well, let's see. I think it's a fairly new story. Not really, really new, but not really, really old either. And this story, now this is going to kind of, this is going to maybe confuse things, because what does this piece usually tell us? What does this piece? It's sand, and it tells us usually about, right, a desert, the place where Jesus lived. But this time it's a different desert. So you have to imagine that we've gone to a different part of the world, and we're in a different desert. To imagine? Yeah, that helps, doesn't it? And this is a story about this person, and her name is Mountain Girl. Mountain Girl. Isn't that a funny name? And Mountain Girl lived with her mom, and her dad, and her little brother. And they were a family that lived in the desert. And this story is about something that happened to Mountain Girl. And it happened around their kitchen table. They were all at the table, and she said, if you could see us sitting at our old, scratched up, homemade kitchen table, you would know that we aren't rich. That's what she said. And she said, but my father is trying to tell us that we are rich. Doesn't he notice my worn out shoes? The brother's patches on his pants? You can't fool me, Mountain Girl says. We're poor. Would rich people sit at a table like this? So that's what she was asking. But her mother pats the table. She pats the table and says, we're rich, and we sit here every day. And Mountain Girl said that she thought she was the only one in her family that was sensible. The table was made out of lumber that somebody else was throwing away. And Mountain Girl says, she looked at this table and she said, this doesn't look like a table where rich people would sit. And her mother said to her, yes, but you know, if all the rulers in the world, got together around this table, she said, they could solve their arguments in half the time. But anyway, Mountain Girl said, tonight it's our kitchen and our argument and our family meeting. And she called the meeting, that's why they're all at the table, and the subject is money. We don't have enough of it, she said. Mountain Girl tells her parents that they should both get better jobs so that they could buy lots of nice new things. That's what she said to her mom and dad. In fact, she turned to them and she said, it would help if you two had more ambition. Ambition is when you work really hard, sometimes too hard at something. And then Mountain Girl said that her parents had some strange ideas about working. They think that the only job worth having is one that's outside. No inside jobs. And they don't mind planting fields building fences, training horses, but they can't stand to be cooped up indoors. And Mountain Girl said, I bet you could make more money if you worked in town. And Father said, remember our one rule, we have to be able to see the sky when we work. That's the one rule. And Mountain Girl, you know what she said? She said, well, if you had a job in an office, you could look through the window and see the sky. But they won't even think about it. And so Mother finally said, okay, Mountain Girl, we're going to explain to you how this works. We're going to explain how we figure out our money. And Father said to Mountain Girl, you're going to be the bookkeeper tonight. And so Father says, don't you know how rich we are? And Mountain Girl said, we can't get very far if we can't even admit that we're poor. But Father said, I'll prove it to you. Let's make a list of the money we earn in a year. So, Mountain Girl got out a clipboard. And she picked up a pen and she said, okay, I'm going to write it down. And so, Father said, not so fast. We have lots of things to think about before we add them all up. And Mountain Girl said, well, what kind of things? And he said, well, we don't just take our pay in cash. We have a special plan so we get paid in sunsets, too. And in having time to hike around the canyons and look for eagles' nests. Well, Mountain Girl was getting really annoyed. She said, can't you give me one single number to write down? And Father said, okay, write down $20,000. So she wrote down $20,000. And he said, that's what it's worth for me to work outside, where I can see the sky and feel the wind and smell the rain. And Mother said, well, you better make that 30,000 because it's worth at least another 10,000 to hear the coyotes howling in the hills at night. So she scratched out 20,000 and she wrote 30,000. And then Mother says that she says, remember, we like to see the mountains that are far away. We like to be able to look at them. And they change color over the course of the day. And that's worth another 5,000. So she wrote down 35,000. And then Father said, well, when a cactus blooms, you should be there to watch it, because it might be a color that you won't ever see again. What is that color worth? And her brother says, 50 cents. But they decide on another 5,000. So it becomes 40,000. And then Mountain Girl had forgotten how much she liked the fact that her father could make bird sounds. And she particularly liked the fact that he made the sound that an owl makes. Do you know what sound an owl makes? Right. Exactly. And so she crossed out the 40,000. She thought that was worth 10,000 because there were so many different sounds. And so now it was $50,000. And then Mother said, let's see what Mountain Girl is worth to us. I wonder how much she's worth. And Mountain Girl suggests they write down another 10,000. But Father said, don't underestimate yourself. You're worth way more than that. He says, remember all those good lists you make? Best books, books to read again, animals we've seen, animals we still haven't seen and want to see. And they decide together that she's worth $1 million. $1 million. So they have 1 million. Whoops. And because I made a mistake. At $1,050,000 so far. And then they decide that they're all each worth $1 million. And so they now have $4,050,000. And then Mountain Girl says that she wants to add another $5,000 for the pleasure of walking through the desert where it's peaceful and quiet. And where she's as free as a lizard, and she doesn't have to follow a trail, and she doesn't have to have a plan. And so that makes $4,055,000. And then her brother says that he wants to put down $7 for all the stars in the sky. And Mountain Girl talks him into making it another $5,000. So now they have $4,060,000. And now Mountain Girl looks at this list that she's made of all the money, and she says, and we haven't even started counting actual cash. And she realizes the cash part doesn't really matter anymore, because when you look at the list of all of the riches, that seems to be enough. And so she says, I think this meeting is over. And she comes over and she pats the table and says, I'm really glad that this table is ours. Isn't that neat? Well, I guess they decided they didn't need it. So I wonder if there's something that you really like in the world that you could put a value on. How much money would it be? Jordan?
I wanted to go to Disneyland, and my mommy thinks it's going to be a lot of money, but she doesn't know what.
Yeah, some things take a lot of money.
I said to my mama, can I go to and do that? And Mom said, that's too much money.
Yeah. Sometimes we have to find things to do that don't cost so much money. And that can be fun too, and that's what Mountain Girl found out. We're going to sing a song about things that I think have value, like rocks, and stars, and oceans. And it's number 92 in More Voices, Like a Rock. And if you know this, please join us in the actions to it. And Hannah, are you going to come, and Jordan, you're going to do the actions with me up here? Let's do it. Let's do it 3 times through. It's quite short. Come here.